Hello, BookTube. I have mail for you. It's not often that I get to open a lot of mail on this channel, and we don't have a lot of packages today for this Friday, but we do have what we lack in number. We make up for in bulk. There's a box, a bigger box, and a great big, even bigger box. I'm going to do these. I don't know anything about them. I'm going to do these in ascending order of size, and we'll see what we encounter. I imagine this is going to draw quite a bit of attention from Frida, who is curious to know. She hears something being ripped. She wants to help in the ripping. Yes, yes, she wants to take part in the destruction. Well, let me help you, baby. What have we got here? I'm going to hand you this box. There you go. This is huge, Frida. Oh boy. Oh, fantastic. Boy, I didn't think I would be getting this. I didn't think I'd be getting this, and if I did, I didn't think I'd be getting a finished copy. Great. Fantastic. Okay, this has no pub sheet in it. It's from the Belknap Press of Harvard University Press, and it's a finished copy, but I'd be willing to bet maybe it doesn't have a pub sheet. Well, it doesn't have a pub sheet because publicists aren't at their desks putting those pub sheets in books and checking with people. They're at home. They're working from home, and they're emailing me, and we're exchanging dog pictures, and it's wonderful. It's good to know they're all out there. They're my favorite people in the publishing world. But they're not in their offices, so I don't have a pub sheet to read from. I'll read from the dust jacket. But another reason might be that the pub sheet might contain the wrong date, right? I mean, a lot of the major book markets in the country are still closed to customers. In Boston, you can't go into a bookstore and browse around, which is an old and somewhat slipshod method of getting books in front of the public that probably is receiving a mortal blow right about now. I mean, we're all online, right? No matter what digital minimalists might say, no matter what people might say who say, well, I'm just not up with the technology, we're all online all the time. It seems like there ought to be a way to streamline that for learning about new books. But anyway, this is by an author I love, absolutely loved. I've talked many times about how authors can have a positive bank account or they can be in debt to me. And this is an author with so much positive goodwill for me that he could do no wrong. This is called Inky Fingers, The Making of Books in Early Modern Europe by the great Anthony Grafton. That is our author. And he is brilliant. There are a few of his books on the walls of this room. And this is a subject right up my alley. Let's hear about this. From Francis Bacon to Barack Obama, thinkers and political leaders have denounced humanists as obsessively bookish and allergic to labor. In this celebration of bookmaking, I've heard that. I can't help but smile when I read that because that's absolutely true. And I've always been mystified by that. I had an old friend once in the 1960s. Who was told that by actually a politician, as mentioned here, a political leader. He was told that by a politician in his borough, a local politician, who knew him and his family and said, why don't you try working for a living instead of writing books? And my friend quipped right away, try writing a novel. See if it seems easy to you. Anyway, in this celebration of bookmaking, in all its messy and intricate detail, renowned historian Anthony Grafton invites us to see the scholars of early modern Europe as diligent workers, meticulously illuminating the physical and mental labors that fostered the golden age of the book, and compiling of notebooks, copying and correcting texts and proofs, preparation of copy. He shows us how the exertions of scholars shaped influential books, treaties, and forgeries. I knew Jason Harrigan was going to come into this at some point. Wow, okay, so I have not seen this book before, but I'm assuming from that description that a certain Dutch humanist is going to be liberally represented in the contents. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Because Erasmus was very much a working author, not just in the sense of writing an enormous amount on every subject, the drop of a hat, but also the work of getting his books made, of going to Aldous Manutius's actual workshop and standing there and looking at the things as they were happening, crossing out proofs while an impatient messenger waited in the doorway, hopeful to catch the tide, all that sort of stuff. Authors like Erasmus had to do that. And even so, they were still far ahead of the curve because copyright laws basically didn't exist. So even with all that work, someone who was willing to do twice as much work, twice as fast, could do a pirate copy of their work. Boy, oh boy. Well, it doesn't matter. I mean, in a way, this is a favorite subject and this is a favorite time of mine, the golden age of the book. But in a way, it doesn't matter because I'd read this author on anything. So that's great. That is a fantastic way to start. All right, now we'll do the slightly bigger box and see what we have here. And this is going to incense my little schnauzer even more. Isn't it, baby? It's going to incense you even more. Oh, I don't know what I'm supposed to do for you, darling. I can't. Frida, this box is bigger than you are. You can't possibly want this. All right, I'll put it. I have to throw it over on her blanket because the space between is too narrow. It's wide enough for her tiny little body, but it's too narrow for her to drag this over there. She likes to drag all things to her blanket or her cat bed out in the other room, so because that's where she destroys them. So what have we got? Oh. Okay, this is going to take a bit of explaining on my part, but did I or did I not just say that book publicists are my very favorite people? They're also the world's most forgiving people. Okay. All right. To make a short story long, a long time ago, Brandon Sanderson's book, The Way of Kings, came out. Big 1,100-page book. A gigantic epic fantasy novel in which every blade of grass has a long personal history and a song behind it. And I got the advance copy. I'd never heard of it before. I'd heard of Brandon Sanderson, but I wasn't, didn't know every jot and tittle of his Cosmere world the way so many fans do. And I read The Way of Kings in that advance copy, and I thought, boy, there's a lot of really good stuff in here. And then I got the finished copy, beautiful finished copy, and I read that. I read it again, and I thought, boy, you weren't wrong. There's a lot of really good stuff in here. Of course, The Way of Kings was just the first book in the Stormlight archive, despite being longer than The Lord of the Rings all by itself. It was only the first book in a series. And when it came time the next year, because Brandon Sanderson writes so fast, when it came time for the next book, Words of Radiance, to come out, I got the advance copy, and I had already gotten rid of both the galley copy and the finished copy of Way of Kings. And I felt bad about that because as soon as I saw the second book, I thought, oh, well, you're going to want all of these. And also, you're going to want to brush up on the first book before you read the second one. And why would you get rid of an epic fantasy novel that you liked? Why would you do that? So I shamefacedly asked the publicist if she could maybe send me a copy of Way of Kings with Words of Radiance. When I got the finished copy of Words of Radiance, could she maybe send me Way of Kings? And she did. She laughed, and she thought nothing of it. And then the third book came out. You can see where I'm going with this. The third book came out, and I suddenly realized that I'd gotten rid of both the first two books. So I shamefacedly emailed the publicist and said, is there any chance that you could send me the first two books as I prepare for the third book? And she laughed, and she did. And I told myself I would not do that again. I told myself absolutely I would not do that again. That it would be too humiliating in addition to everything else. Because there's a fourth book coming out in November. And I told myself, well, okay, now that you know that, you will make it your business to go and get copies of those first three books rather than bother the publicist one more time. But I was emailing with the publicist about Rhythm of War, the fourth book coming out in November, and I happened to mention that I didn't have the first three. And would it be too much trouble? And do you think somewhere down the line, no rush, of course, you could maybe ask the folks at the warehouse? And she did. She did. Bless her. Bless her. So, okay, so I'm going to put I'm going to put these on the shelf, and I am absolutely positively not going to get rid of them. And I'm going to keep Rhythm of War, and that's all there is to it. I'm not going to get rid of these at all. So I'm never, ever going to have to ask for this author's backlist again. Never. So there you go. I love book publicists. I really do. They are long-suffering. And then we'll do this. This last one is a huge stand-up thing, and it's rattling a little. So I don't know if it's. I don't know if it's books. Oh no! Oh no! It's a present from one of you. What have you got to say for yourself? What have you got to say for yourself? These are emergency rations and are thus exempt from your no-gift policy. I have made internet lawyers out of every one of you. I never said that emergency rations were exempt. And what the sender here, the nicest person in the world, is referring to is an edict that I have made for years on this channel, which is don't send me anything. For Pete's sake. You've all got jobs and children and grandchildren and all sorts of financial obligations. If anybody's going to be sending people stuff, it's going to be me. And I haven't been able to do that because I've been in quarantine. And so recently I relaxed my standards just a bit and said, all right, well, you can send me stuff. But it's going right back to the way it was as soon as we're all out of quarantine. But I made no such exemption for emergency rations. None. What have we got? Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, my goodness. All right, well, I'm assuming that those aren't for me. Maybe that's an unwarranted assumption. It could very well be that that's an unwarranted assumption. If I had a dime for every time over the decades when I've been walking my dogs, 3 beagles, 6 beagles, 8 beagles, 1 beagle, a basset hound and a pointer, a little schnauzer, if I had a dime for every time a little kid that we have been passing has pointed to us and pointed to the dogs and gone 1, 2, 3, and then pointed at me and said 4 dogs. If I had a dime for every time that's happened. So I don't know. These might be intended for me. Actually, let's see how well they go over, shall we? Since their target audience is acutely interested. Ooh. How do you like that? But if those aren't intended for me, then I'm going to assume that there's a box inside this box, and I have to assume that this box is not going to include books at all. And I think I know, if it's not going to include books, I think I know what it is going to include. Let's see. Oreos. Yes, indeed. You people know me too well. Okay. All right, well. Okay. Good Lord, what a mail haul. Good Lord. Baby, did you finish that? I don't think you did. Oh, maybe you did, maybe you didn't. I don't know one way or another because sometimes I give her a chewy treat and she buries it. Very industriously. She'll bury it in a folded blanket. She'll bury it in the cushions of a couch. So I don't... Did you finish that last one? You can't have another one. I'm not going to just feed her all of these. These will be special treats. Oh my. All right, well, I cannot thank you enough. Emergency rations. I gotta love it. All right, so we have books in this mail haul, and they really please. We have Inky Fingers by Anthony Grafton, but really it would be anything. I would read anything by this author. And we have the Stormlight Archives by Brandon Sanderson to date, the extant Stormlight Archives. And notice this Way of Kings does not have an obnoxious yellow sticker. It's a mass market paperback, true, but it doesn't have an obnoxious yellow sticker, so that's something in its favor. So that was my favorite mail haul of the week. So I'm going to wrap this up. I'm going to quit while I'm ahead, but I will see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.